COP26 is our last chance to avoid the worst effects of climate change.
COP26 has been billed as one of the most important global meetings in recent history.
There is not a second, a minute that we can afford to delay.
We might look back on COP26 as being the most important international meeting of the century.
The COP in COP26 stands for Conference of Parties. The parties are all signatories to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC. Signed in 1992, the convention aims to achieve the stabilisation of greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere. But that goal is implemented through more specific agreements. First, the Kyoto Protocol, through to the Paris Agreement. It was signed in 2015, setting a specific goal to try to stop global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius and binding parties to stop temperatures rising at 2 degrees.
The whole world agreed in Paris, including Australia, that we would be updating those targets by 2020, now 2021 because of COVID, with more ambition.
It didn't bind countries to any particular cuts in emissions. Instead, it says countries have to update their own pledges every 5 years.
Every year needs to be better than the year before.
And that's why this year is so important. It's the 5th year in the cycle, and so it's time for countries to update their ambition.
The importance of Glasgow is that it gets leaders from these countries under a global spotlight, where they have to explain themselves, not just to their domestic audiences, but to a global one as well.
But there are other things on top of that that make it an even bigger deal.
A code red for humanity.
Alarming news tonight. Climate change is now rapid, widespread, and intensifying.
A dire report released today by the United Nations paints a grim picture for our future unless we take action now.
This year, the most authoritative climate science body, the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, issued a stark warning. Its report, which was signed off by every nation on Earth, warned we are just 10 years away from breaching the 1.5 degree threshold.
Look, what the best available science is telling us is that to stop global warming, we have to bring emissions to zero.
Given the 5-year cycles under the Paris Agreement, this meeting is the last opportunity to set goals that give us a decent chance of getting there. According to the United Nations, if the pledges made so far are acted on, the world will warm by a catastrophic 2.7 degrees by 2100. So the pressure is on all countries to lift their ambition and to cease the use of thermal coal, to speed up the adoption of electric vehicles and accelerate the uptake of renewable energy.
The IPCC report indicates that we need to be 50% reduced in emissions compared to 2010 levels by 2030.
And the UK is calling on developed countries to commit to that, along with reaching net zero by 2050. Ambitious emissions cuts are the main game at Glasgow, but there are a bunch of other important issues that need to be nutted out too. The world has agreed to find $100 billion every year to help the developing world adapt to climate change and lower their emissions. But so far, we've come up short.
Inequalities are now being laid open and being put on the table by COVID, but that will be 100 times worse with unabated climate change.
This year is also important because it looks like success is actually possible. After pulling out of the Paris Agreement under Trump, the US is back and playing a leading role.
I think we have to end the word climate change and own up to the fact it is the climate crisis now.
And a Conservative government in the UK is gunning for a win.
We're doing this not because we're hair shirt wearing, tree hugging, mung bean munching eco freaks. We're doing it to save our planet and create millions of high-skilled jobs.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison is going to the meeting, but with commitments that trail comparable countries.
Those 2030 targets have been inadequate right from the beginning. They're even more inadequate compared to what other countries are promising now, and they're extremely inadequate compared to what we know we need to do based on the science.
For humanity to thrive and for young people to have hope, it seems now is the time for goals and objectives to be turned into action.